An American man, Michael Cooper, travels to Nigeria to marry Adana, a woman he met and fell in love with while working remotely. But tragedy strikes days before their traditional marriage. Her sudden death shocks Michael, and when the elders insist the wedding must continue with her corpse to uphold sacred tradition, Michael must face impossible choices, dark secrets, and a haunting truth. The plane shuddered slightly as it sliced through a dense wall of clouds above the Gulf of Guinea. From his window seat, Michael Cooper pressed his forehead against the cool glass, staring down at the blur of green jungle and distant riverbanks below. His heart thumped, not from fear of flying, but anticipation. After 2 years of video calls, handwritten letters, and late-night voice notes filled with laughter, he was finally going to meet Adana's family and marry her in the traditional Igbo way. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more hauntingly unforgettable tales that blur the line between life, love, and what lies beyond. He adjusted the ring box in his jacket pocket as if to reassure himself it was still there. Inside, a simple gold band with her name engraved in cursive, "To my forever, Adana." It was sentimental and corny, but it made her smile when he told her. She'd called him Uniem, her man. As the landing gear deployed and the pilot announced descent into Murtala Muhammad International Airport in Lagos, a wave of emotion surged through him. Excitement, anxiety, love. He was ready. The arrival gate was a blur of movement and noise, families shouting joyfully, drivers waving handwritten signs, the smell of jollof rice from a nearby stall. But through the crowd, he spotted her brother, Obinna, tall and broad-shouldered, holding a sign that read, "Michael C." They hugged stiffly. Obinna offered a quiet nod. "You're welcome, my in-law." It was the first time anyone had called him that. Michael smiled, awkward but flattered. The next few hours were a whirlwind, crossing from Lagos to Owerri by connecting flight, then riding deep into Imo State's rural belly in a rattling Toyota pickup. As they neared the village, the asphalt gave way to red earth roads, lined with lush trees whispering in the late afternoon breeze. Women carried baskets on their heads, children ran barefoot chasing tires. Finally, the car pulled into a compound surrounded by tall bamboo fences. Women ululated from the entrance, clapping and dancing as Michael stepped out. His cheeks flushed. A middle-aged woman rushed to embrace him, Adana's mother. "Welcome, my son," she cried, eyes misty. Michael felt the tears threatening his own eyes. But she wasn't there. "Where's Adana?" he asked, scanning the faces. "She's inside, preparing for tomorrow," her mother said, a little too quickly. "You will see her soon." Obinna gently took his bag and ushered him toward the guest hut. "Rest, brother. Tomorrow, we begin." That night, the village felt alive in a way Michael hadn't expected. Drums echoed from the distant square. The scent of roasted plantain wafted through the open window. Somewhere close, a baby wailed, and then stopped. Fireflies blinked like stars in the darkness. It should have been peaceful. But something was off. Michael couldn't sleep. He rolled in bed, thoughts scattered. Why hadn't Adana come to greet him? Was it just tradition? Shyness? He sat up when he heard the distant sound of women singing morning songs. It was low, eerie, almost like a hum floating through the compound. Then silence. He lay back down, uneasy. The morning was bright, the sun golden and defiant in a pale blue sky. Villagers moved about preparing for the wine-carrying ceremony, where Michael would officially request Adana's hand in marriage. He was dressed in a white senator outfit stitched just for the occasion. But as he stepped into the courtyard, something was terribly wrong. No music. No dancing. No Adana. Instead, elders stood in a tight circle, whispering. Women sat on the ground, many weeping quietly. A heavy silence hung like fog. Obinna approached him, eyes red-rimmed. "What's going on?" Michael asked, heart now racing. "Where is Adana?" Obinna looked down. "Brother, there was an incident last night. She collapsed during dance rehearsals. She was rushed to the local clinic." Michael's chest clenched. "She didn't make it," Obinna whispered. The world tilted. Michael's ears rang. The sound of a passing motorbike buzzed like a hornet in his skull. He stared at Obinna, unable to process the words. No. No, that can't be. I'm sorry, Obinna said, placing a hand on his shoulder. It happened fast. The healer said her heart just gave out. Michael stumbled back. No. I spoke to her 3 days ago. She was laughing, she was fine. She was excited. He turned to Adana's mother, who sat on the ground, her wrapper half undone, weeping into a white handkerchief. He dropped to his knees beside her. What happened? He demanded. Why didn't anyone call me? She looked at him through wet, grief-stricken eyes. You are here now. You are part of this. The way she said it sent a chill down his spine. Later that afternoon, the elders summoned him into the obi, the family hall. The room was dim, save for shafts of sunlight streaming through carved wooden windows. Incense smoke curled from clay bowls placed at the corners. 6 elders sat in a half-circle. Michael stood opposite them. She loved you, one said. Her spirit knew it. That is why we must complete the rite. Michael blinked. What rite? The marriage, another elder said. You must marry her. Michael's jaw dropped. She's dead. The oldest elder, with a deep scar running across his left cheek, leaned forward. In our tradition, the bond between lovers is sacred. Death does not break it when intent has already been declared. The spirit must be honored. Michael laughed bitterly. You want me to marry her corpse? You came to take her as wife, the elder continued. She prepared herself for you. Her spirit still waits. If you abandon her now, she will not rest. Neither will you. Michael's hands trembled. This is insane. You're telling me I have to. It is not a request, said Obinna, standing at the doorway. If you love her, you will honor her. Michael turned and left without another word. He wandered into the woods behind the compound, where the scent of pine and soil cleared his head. He sat under a mango tree and wept. How could this be real? Adana was the one thing in his life that made sense. In a world full of noise, she was his silence, his peace. And now, she was gone. He pulled out his phone and opened her last message. It was a voice note. Baby, she had said softly, I know you'll love the village. The sky is different here. The trees feel older. There's a kind of magic I can't explain. There's something I've been meaning to tell you, but I'll wait until you're here. I want to see your face when I say it. Michael sobbed into his palm. What was she going to say? Was it a warning? A confession? He would never know. That night, as he lay in his room, Obinna entered quietly and handed him a letter. She wrote this the day before you arrived, he said. Michael sat up and opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letter read, My love. If you're reading this, then I am no longer with you the way we hoped. But I am still here. I need you to be strong now, stronger than ever. There are things I never told you, not because I didn't trust you, but because I wanted you to love me without fear. This land, my family, they carry a curse of sorts. One tied to our bloodline, one that chooses its vessel. I knew something might happen, but I thought I had time. If they ask you to marry me still, please do it. Not for tradition, but to set me free. I know it sounds crazy, but please trust me. Even in death, I will always love you. Your bride, Adana. Michael dropped the letter. The room suddenly felt cold. Outside, the women had started singing again. This time, it wasn't mourning. It was celebration. The morning mist hung low over the village, a pale veil that blurred the edges of the red clay huts and quieted the morning bustle. Roosters crowed, but their voices seemed distant, muffled by grief, by shock, by the ancient weight of tradition pressing down on everyone. Michael stood at the window of the guest hut, watching the fog slowly lift. In his hand, he still held Adana's letter from the night before. He had read it a dozen times already, trying to decipher the deeper meaning behind every word. Please do it. Not for tradition, but to set me free. What did she mean? A curse? A binding? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of soft footsteps behind him. It was Maman Kechi, the village midwife and elder woman, dressed in a wrapper and white headscarf. Her face was calm, lined with years of wisdom and silence. "Good morning, my son," she said gently. Michael gave a stiff nod. "There's nothing good about it." She didn't flinch. "Today, we prepare her. You must also prepare." He turned, frustration bubbling in his chest. "Prepare for what? A wedding to a corpse? You people want me to pose next to her body and pretend we're in love." Maman Kechi stepped closer. Her tone remained soft, but her eyes grew hard. "You are not pretending. You are finishing what you started." "I didn't start this." "Yes, you did," she said. "When you crossed the ocean. When you made promises. When you opened your heart to a daughter of this soil. You don't understand, but that doesn't mean it isn't real." Michael looked away, jaw clenched. She wouldn't want this. She asked for it. Michael turned sharply. "What?" Mama Kechi nodded. "She came to me a week ago. She knew something was near. She asked me to prepare her. If the spirits took her early, you were to complete the rites." Michael stepped back, his breath shallow. "She knew," he whispered. Maman Kechi walked toward the door. "Some people are born knowing the end of their stories. You must respect the one she wrote for you." And then she was gone. By mid-morning, the compound was filled with quiet activity. Women scrubbed the yard, painted clay walls with white chalk symbols. Men carried benches into the courtyard. A white canopy was erected, where the bride and groom would sit. The bride, Adana. Her body lay inside the family house, covered in white cloth. Michael had not seen her since she collapsed. He couldn't bring himself to. He sat under a tree, watching, not moving, not helping. His heart was knotted, torn between love and disbelief. He remembered her voice, her laugh, how she would tilt her head when she was teasing him. How alive she had been. Now she was the centerpiece of a wedding neither of them asked for. A few feet away, Obinna approached, holding a gourd of palm wine. "You have to drink this during the ceremony," he said. "It's tradition." Michael stared at the drink, then at him. "You're all insane." Obinna didn't flinch. "Do you think this is easy for us? Do you think we wanted to bury our sister like this? But there are laws older than sorrow." Michael stood up sharply. "What if I refuse?" Obinna looked him in the eyes. "Then she won't rest. And neither will you." Michael's voice cracked. "I don't believe that." "You don't have to believe it. But once the rites begin, belief won't matter. You'll feel it. In your skin. In your sleep." Michael turned away, trying to blink back the burning in his eyes. "Leave me alone." Obinna dropped the gourd at his feet and walked off. That afternoon, the family house was sealed for the preparation of the body. Only women were allowed inside. The air outside grew thick with incense and smoke. Strange chants floated through the walls. Michael sat alone in the guest hut, gripping the edges of the bed. He had made a decision. He was leaving. This was madness, grief twisted into ritual, love perverted by ancient superstition. He would book a flight back to New York and mourn Adana the way normal people did. He opened his suitcase, shoved his things in. His passport, wallet, phone. But the screen was black. Dead. He checked the charger. It was working. But the phone wouldn't turn on. A chill crawled down his spine. He zipped his bag and walked outside, but the air had changed. The breeze that had cooled the village all morning was gone. The clouds now churned above, thick and dark, though no rain fell. He made it halfway to the main road before he saw them. 3 boys, no older than 12, standing side by side in the middle of the path. Dressed in white. Faces painted with red ochre. They stared at him silently, eyes wide and unmoving. Michael's heart skipped. "Excuse me," he said, stepping around them. But they didn't move. As he passed, one of them whispered, "You can't leave her." Michael froze. He turned. "What did you say?" The boys were gone. He spun in a circle. The path was empty. Only the trees rustled. And then he heard it, soft, melodic. Her voice. "Michael." He turned sharply. "Nothing." "Michael, don't run." He dropped his bag and ran back to the compound. By nightfall, the courtyard was transformed. Lanterns lined the walls. Drums beat slowly, echoing through the village like a heartbeat. Women sang softly, dressed in deep indigo. Men sat in silence, heads bowed. In the center, under the white canopy, a chair was placed. Beside it, another chair. Adana's. She was brought out under a veil, her body dressed in brilliant red lace, beaded headdress perched atop her wrapped hair, wrists adorned with coral bangles. The scent of lavender and camphor surrounded her. Michael nearly collapsed when he saw her. She looked radiant. Still. But radiant. The body was propped gently, as if merely asleep. Maman Kechi guided Michael forward. He stood beside her, legs trembling. The high priest stepped forward with a scroll. He chanted in Igbo, sprinkling water and wine around them. The ritual began. Michael's breathing grew shallow. He glanced sideways. Her face was covered in the veil. He wanted to rip it off and scream. Instead, he stood there as the priest placed the scroll in his hand. "You must sign," the priest said. Michael held the pen, unmoving. And then he heard her voice again. Not from memory. Right behind his ear. "Please, finish it." He gasped and looked around. No one flinched. He signed. The scroll was lifted. The drums stopped. And then, lightning cracked across the sky. The canopy shook. A gust of wind tore through the courtyard, snatching leaves into the air. One of the smaller girls fainted. A dog began barking wildly in the distance. Maman Kechi shouted a prayer and raised her arms to the sky. Obinna held Michael as he stumbled backward, face pale. It was done. He was married. To the dead. The ceremony ended with eerie calm. Everyone clapped slowly. A goat was sacrificed behind the house. The blood poured into the earth. Michael sat beside the body, unable to move. "She's at peace now," Maman Kechi whispered. But Michael felt no peace. Only the weight of something unseen, unfinished. The candle beside the window flickered violently as if caught in a gust, but the hut's windows were shut tight. Michael sat at the foot of the bed, staring at the flame. It was almost midnight. The silence outside was complete, too complete. Not even the usual crickets dared to sing. Since the wedding ceremony, something had shifted in the village. Or maybe, in him. He hadn't slept properly in 2 nights. When he closed his eyes, her voice came. Clear. Soft. Familiar. Sometimes, it was a whisper. Sometimes, it was laughter. But always, it came from behind him. And every time he turned, no one was there. Earlier that evening, Obinna had insisted he sleep in the marital hut, a small house on the far end of the compound, built for newlyweds. Michael had refused. "I'm not sleeping next to a corpse." But Obinna's reply chilled him. "You already vowed to." Now, he was alone in that hut. The bed was made for 2, the far side decorated with white beads and fresh flowers, flowers that had already started to wilt. Her side. And then, the scratching began. Michael froze. It came from under the bed. Slow. Deliberate. He leaned forward, heart pounding, sweat forming on his brow. He reached for the flashlight. Clicked it on. Nothing. Silence. He exhaled shakily, and then, thud, something dropped onto the roof above. He stood up, heart racing. The scratching returned. He yanked the door open and ran outside into the night, nearly tripping over his own feet. He didn't stop running until he reached the obi, the ancestral hut where the elders met. There, sitting in a circle around a fire, were 3 elders and Mama Nkechi. They looked up when he burst in. "I need to leave," Michael said, panting. "I can't stay here. Something's wrong." Mama Nkechi exchanged a look with the others. "You are not wrong," she said carefully. "But you are not in danger. Not from her." Michael stepped closer. "You people knew this would happen." The oldest elder nodded. "Your presence here, it has awakened things. Not evil, but unsettled." Michael slammed his hand on the wall. "You married me to a ghost. I was supposed to start a life, not lose my mind." Mama Nkechi stood slowly, approaching him. "Adana has not left you," she said. "Because she loved you too deeply. Because the ritual was not enough." Michael stared at her. "Then what is enough?" She looked at the other elders, then back to him. "There's one final rite. It's dangerous, but it may be the only way to release her." He swallowed. "Release her. Her spirit clings to you," she said. "She doesn't know she's dead. She still thinks she's your bride." Michael's legs weakened beneath him. "She doesn't know? She needs to be told," Mama Nkechi said softly. "But in her world. Not yours." Michael stared blankly. "What does that mean?" The elder stepped forward. "We must guide you into the in-between." That night, they prepared the ritual in the forest clearing. The moon hung high, casting pale light through the tall palms. Michael stood in the center of a chalk-drawn circle, dressed in white, barefoot. Around him, candles flickered in gourd lanterns. The air smelled of earth and incense. Mama Nkechi stood across from him, holding a bowl of dark liquid. "You must drink," she said. "Then lie down and close your eyes. Let the spirit take you." Michael looked at the bowl. "What's in it?" "Palm wine, roots, ash, and a piece of her burial cloth." He hesitated, then drank. It was bitter and smoky, burning his throat. Within minutes, the world began to sway. He lay down on a mat as instructed. The drums began, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. And then, darkness. He opened his eyes to blinding white light. He was no longer in the forest. He was in a house, familiar yet strange. The air was still. The colors faded, almost like a dream. And standing at the doorway, wearing the same red dress she was buried in, was Adana. Alive. Smiling. "Michael," she whispered, stepping toward him. His knees buckled. Tears filled his eyes. "You're here," he said. "Of course," she replied. "You're my husband now." She wrapped her arms around him. Her touch was warm, solid. But something felt wrong. Her heart didn't beat. Her eyes didn't blink. Michael stepped back. "Adana, do you know where we are?" "In our home," she said softly. "We're finally together." He glanced around. The room was suspended in silence. No breeze. No smell. No life. He took her hand. "Adana." Something happened. Her smile faded. "What do you mean?" "You died," he said gently. "During the wedding preparations." She frowned, as if trying to remember. Her face twisted in confusion. "No. I was dancing, and then..." Her voice trailed off. Tears welled in her eyes. "No. No. That's not true." "It is," he whispered. "I was there. I saw your body. They married me to you anyway." She stepped back, trembling. "They lied to me," she whispered. "They said I was still alive. That you were coming." "You're stuck here," Michael said. "Your spirit hasn't moved on." Adana's voice broke. "I don't want to go without you." Michael took a shaky breath. "I love you. But you have to go. You can't stay like this. You're hurting. She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she smiled, sad, grateful. I needed to hear it. From you. She leaned forward and kissed his forehead. I'll wait for you, she whispered. But not like this. And then, the world around him dissolved. Michael gasped as he woke up in the forest, drenched in sweat. The drums had stopped. The candles had burned low. Mama Nkechi sat nearby, chanting quietly. When she saw his eyes open, she smiled. She's gone, he said, voice trembling. She's free, she replied. But as he stood to leave, a deep rumble echoed across the trees. The wind picked up, swirling the ashes from the fire into the sky. Michael froze. He heard her voice again, faint, distant. I love you. And just like that, it was gone. The next morning, the sky was clear, the village unusually quiet. Michael packed his things in silence. No one stopped him. Even Obinna only offered a solemn handshake. As he passed by the family compound, Mama Nkechi stood at the entrance. You did what many men would fear, she said. Michael nodded. I loved her, he said. Still do. She reached into her wrapper and handed him something small, Adana's necklace. A carved wooden pendant in the shape of a crescent moon. She wanted you to have this. He took it, gripping it tightly. Thank you. He turned and began walking down the dusty path. Toward the airport. Toward a life beyond grief. But deep down, he knew, some part of him would always belong to the forest. To her. To the marriage that defied death. What would you do if the one you loved reached for you from beyond the grave? If you're caught in this story like Michael, don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling story where truth, loss, and destiny collide. The Abuja airport was bustling with noise and bodies, but Michael moved through it like a ghost. He had boarded the flight with trembling hands, seated near a window as rain tapped softly against the plane's side. The necklace Adana once wore now hung heavy around his neck, the crescent moon pressing coldly against his skin. He hadn't spoken to anyone since the ritual. Not even during the flight. Not to the man beside him. Not to the flight attendant who gently asked if he was okay. All he could think about was her face. How warm and soft she looked in that strange in-between world. How her voice lingered like a breath on the back of his neck. How, in that brief second of contact, it felt like his soul had been reshaped. Back in New York City, the gray skyline welcomed him with a chill that cut through his bones. Winter had arrived during his weeks in Nigeria. It was as though the seasons had changed just to mirror the storm he carried inside. His apartment felt smaller than before. The walls tighter. The air heavier. He stood in the middle of the living room, staring at nothing. There were wedding decorations still taped to the kitchen wall, leftovers from before he left. He'd hung them up before their trip, excited to surprise her with a little engagement party once they returned. Now they looked like confetti at a funeral. Michael dropped his suitcase and crumbled into the couch. He wanted to cry, but no tears came. Just silence. The next day, he returned to work. His boss, Mr. Whitmore, offered condolences and a brief pat on the back. Colleagues whispered behind cubicles, careful not to ask too much. Except Angela. She was the only one who dared sit beside him at lunch. I read about those marriage rituals, she said gently. In some cultures, it's a way of sealing the soul. Closure. Michael gave a dry chuckle. You don't get closure marrying a corpse. Angela hesitated. But maybe she did. Michael didn't reply. That night, he couldn't sleep. At exactly 3:12 a.m., he heard the whisper again. Michael. He sat up, eyes wide. It wasn't a hallucination. He turned slowly toward the kitchen. Nothing. But the smell of lavender hung in the air. Her favorite scent. He stood and walked toward the fridge. On the counter lay a spoon. It hadn't been there before. And then, tap, tap, came a sound from the bedroom. His stomach clenched. He followed it, heart pounding. On the mirror, drawn in condensation, were 3 words. "You promised me." Michael stumbled backward. The next morning, Michael booked a therapy session. Dr. Isabel Green, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, sat across from him in a softly lit office, a steaming cup of tea in her hand. "You've gone through trauma," she said gently. "People respond to grief in different ways." Michael nodded, eyes red. "But I'm not just grieving. I think something followed me back." She frowned. "You mean a spirit?" He nodded. "Her." Dr. Green leaned in. "Tell me what makes you believe that." Michael told her everything. The ritual, the ceremony, the dreams, the mirror. She listened in silence. When he was done, she said softly, "I don't think you're insane. But I do think she's asking for something." Michael leaned back. "Like what?" Dr. Green tapped her fingers together. "You said she didn't know she was dead. That you told her. But maybe that wasn't enough. Maybe she still needs closure from your world, not just hers." Michael's throat tightened. "What do I have to do?" Over the next few days, Michael found himself researching ancestral rites, funerary traditions, and psychological soul ties. Late at night, he sat on the floor surrounded by books and notes, Adana's necklace clenched in one hand. He reached out to Mom Nkechi on WhatsApp. Her reply came hours later. "There is one final rite. A severing. But it must be done where she was buried." Michael stared at the screen. "Back to Nigeria?" His fingers hovered over the screen. Then, slowly, he typed, "I'm coming." 3 weeks later, he stepped off the plane into the humid Nigerian night. Obinna met him at the airport, wordless, their hug heavy with unspoken truth. "She's been restless," Obinna finally said, driving down the dusty roads. "We hear her voice in the wind. Mama says the dogs won't go near her grave." Michael didn't speak. He just nodded. When they arrived at the village, everything felt thinner. Like the veil between life and death had worn out. Mama Nkechi was waiting, dressed in ceremonial white again. "You've come," she said. "I had no choice." She led him to the graveyard. Adana's grave lay beneath a mango tree, her tombstone small but carved with intricate Igbo patterns. The final rite began at dusk. Michael was instructed to kneel beside her grave. Before him lay a basin of river water, mixed with palm wine and crushed ashes from the original ceremony. Beside it, her wedding veil. "You must speak to her," Mama Nkechi said. "Tell her to go. Tell her you're releasing her." Michael's hands trembled as he picked up the veil. He closed his eyes. "Adana," he whispered. "You were everything I ever wanted. I came here to build a life with you. I came here to love you. And I still do." His voice broke. "But you're not here anymore. And you can't stay with me. You're not supposed to. You have to go, not because I want to let go, but because I love you enough to let go." A wind rose. The veil in his hand flapped violently, as if trying to escape. He pressed it down, tears pouring. "I release you. Please, rest." A loud crack split the air, like a tree snapping in half. Everyone around the grave fell silent. The wind died. And then, a warmth. A sudden warmth flooded Michael's chest. Not fire. Not fear. Peace. He opened his eyes. The veil was gone. So was the scent of lavender. Just earth, wind, stars, and silence. That night, for the first time in weeks, Michael slept without hearing her voice. The dreams didn't come. The whispers didn't return. Only silence. The kind of silence that heals. A week later, Michael stood beside the grave one last time before leaving the village. He placed a small photograph of them together, one of the only pictures from before the wedding, at the base of the tombstone. "I'll never forget you," he whispered. As he turned to leave, a mango dropped from the tree and rolled to his feet. He smiled. It was the first time he had in a long, long time. 6 months later. Spring had returned to New York, blooming life back into the city's concrete veins. In the park near his apartment, children squealed across playgrounds, lovers shared coffee on benches, and dogs barked into the wind like they could chase time itself. Michael sat alone near the pond, his fingers wrapped around a thermos of tea, the crescent moon pendant still resting against his chest, but no longer hidden. Today, he wore it outward, almost like armor, or perhaps, tribute. So much had changed. And yet, some things refused to fade. Every now and then, in the hush of early morning, he'd still hear her laugh. But it wasn't haunting anymore. It was comforting. The publishing house where Michael worked had been subtly surprised by his transformation. He no longer came in late or left early. He was more focused, more precise. But more than that, he was writing again. Not emails. Not reports. Stories. And it started with one word, Adana. The first piece he published wasn't fiction. It was a raw, heartbreaking essay titled, Married to a Memory. He didn't name the village. He didn't reveal the details of the ritual. But he told the truth about falling in love with a Nigerian woman, traveling for a wedding, and burying her instead. He wrote about how he'd married her body, how he'd nearly lost his mind to grief, and how, through ancient rituals, he came to understand that love, real love, couldn't always stay. The piece went viral. Thousands of shares, comments, interviews. Suddenly, Michael Carter wasn't just a grieving man. He was a storyteller of impossible truths. One rainy Thursday, as he stepped out of a bookstore that now carried his collection of essays, a stranger approached him. She was tall, wrapped in a yellow raincoat, her skin deep bronze, her eyes sharp with recognition. Michael Carter. He nodded, hesitantly. I'm Ada Ora, she said. Adana's cousin. I live in Boston. I read your story. Michael froze. He hadn't expected that name, not out here, not ever again. I didn't know she had family in the States, he said. Ada Ora smiled sadly. We weren't close. But I visited her once before she moved back to Nigeria. They stood quietly for a beat. I just wanted to say, thank you, she said. For honoring her. For not running away from what you went through. Michael's voice came slowly. There was nowhere to run. Ada Ora tilted her head. You know, she always said she'd be with someone who could feel more than what people see. Michael smiled faintly. She was right. Ada Ora hesitated, then held out a small envelope. She left this at my apartment. Said it was in case she didn't make it through something. She was worried. She felt something coming before she even traveled back. Michael's hand trembled as he took it. Ada Ora walked away, disappearing into the passing crowd. Inside the envelope was a folded note, handwritten in Adana's familiar, sweeping script. Michael, my star. If you're reading this, it means something I feared came true. Maybe the spirits whispered it, maybe it was just a woman's fear. But if you're reading this, I'm not with you. I want you to know I didn't want to leave. I wanted to build a life with you, cook together, argue about pillows, name our children something ridiculous and poetic. But more than anything, I wanted you to live. Don't carry me like a wound. Carry me like a lesson, like a name on your bones. Love again. Not like me. Differently. Fully. And when you do, give her the ring I never got to wear. I know it's beautiful. I know you picked it just right. I'll watch her wear it from where I am, and I'll smile. I love you. Adana. Michael didn't realize he was crying until the ink blurred beneath his thumb. That weekend, he opened the box he'd refused to touch since returning from Nigeria. Inside was the engagement ring. Still shining. Still waiting. He took it out, turned it in the light, and held it to his chest. I'll know when it's time, he whispered. Months passed. And life, true to its promise, did not remain still. Michael was invited to speak at a conference on cross-cultural grief and storytelling in Chicago. His panel was intimate, and when he told the story, delicately edited for the audience. There was not a dry eye in the room. Afterward, a woman approached him. She introduced herself as Evelyn, a cultural anthropologist specializing in West African traditions. Her eyes were sharp but kind, her questions respectful. "I've read your essay," she said, smiling. "And I don't think I've ever seen grief told with such gentleness." He chuckled softly. "I didn't feel gentle when I lived it." They walked and talked for hours that night, about tradition, death, reincarnation, and the spaces between. For the first time in over a year, Michael found himself smiling without guilt. They kept in touch. Conversations became weekly, then daily. She visited New York. He visited Boston. By the time a year had passed since Adana's passing, Evelyn had become a part of his life. Not as a replacement, but as something new, whole, different. Just as Adana had asked. One spring morning, as they sipped tea in his apartment, Evelyn glanced at the necklace still hanging around his neck. "She meant a lot to you," she said. Michael nodded. "She shaped everything I am now." Evelyn reached across the table and took his hand. "Then I'll thank her," she said softly, "for making you this kind of man." Michael stared at her, stunned by the grace in her voice. And in that moment, he knew. A month later, in a small garden overlooking the East River, Michael knelt before Evelyn and opened the same velvet box. Inside, Adana's ring. Evelyn gasped. "Are you sure?" Michael smiled, eyes glistening. "She wanted someone to wear it. And if anyone should, it's you." She didn't say yes. She just cried, nodded, and threw her arms around him. It was the purest answer he could have asked for. That night, Michael returned to the park where he often sat alone. This time, Evelyn beside him, her head on his shoulder. He looked up at the stars. Then whispered into the wind. "I did what you asked. I lived." For a brief moment, a gust swirled around them, soft, warm, and sweet with lavender. Evelyn smiled. "Did you feel that?" Michael nodded slowly. "Yes. Love doesn't end. It transforms." If this story touched your soul, make sure you like and subscribe for more unforgettable tales that explore life, loss, and what comes after.